good with the shot of the goal!
Big goal for Ferris State. Make it a 3-1 game.
Great job by the Bulldogs to find a way to get it done.
Some people don't like it, but that's just how I am.
College sports is shifting. It's all about game experience.
I can't think of better people to be spending my time with.
We raise a family here, and it's something that's not seen in a lot of other schools.
You're listening to Behind the Bulldogs, brought to you by Ferris State Athletics.
It's Behind the Bulldogs Summer Series, Episode 5. We got a great episode. Last week, talked about women's track and field. This week, going to go to the other side with men's track and field. We got our own in-house expert, Brandon Worth, sitting across from me. Brody Kaiser is joining us as well, as always. Hopefully you're having a good day, but let's get into a good episode.
Great episode on deck. We look forward to breaking it down, and we can't thank enough our great friends at Tezos Digital for sponsoring Behind the Bulldogs. Got to get those bills paid, and they can help you with all of your digital online assets, whether it's media, website design, no matter what it is. You can trust the experts at DezosDigital.com today. So we had a great show in store, and as Joe mentioned, as a fellow track and field athlete, I am very excited to talk about the men's team, one that I have certainly spent a lot of time with over the past 5 years. A lot of great things coming. I truly believe it, and let's get right into it, fellas, eh?
I think we should start by giving our own Brandon Worth a round of applause for an outstanding track and field career.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Everyone out there, give Brandon a round of applause.
Great job, man.
Thank you for your years of service to the Bulldogs.
There you go. I appreciate that, guys. It means a lot. So this team was definitely in a lot of great spots this year. The consistency overall was something, obviously, that has kind of been a little bit of a struggle with just the program in general. We've got some great talent in the team, just a couple injuries here and there, and myself included. And we mentioned that on last week's episode with the women, kind of on the same path as well for the men's. But just overall, I mean, the season was it was a special one. Of course, for me being my last year, knowing that at the very, very beginning, it's definitely tough to go through mentally, but this group really stayed resilient, and I think that was the biggest thing. No, we did not put the results that we wanted to team-wise on the board when it comes to team scores, team finishes overall, but there was a lot of growth that happened this year, a lot of untapped potential that was tapped at the end of the year, and I think that's something that really you can look forward to positively for this group overall. I mean, you look at the GLIAC placings. Yes, we didn't necessarily get as much team score totals that we wanted to, but we got some guys on the podium. We had some great performances, and not only that, a couple of people that missed out on the podium very close that are coming back and are going to give it another round here next year.
Yeah, that's one thing, especially like we were talking about all year. We've seen consistent improvement, especially when you talk about it, usually at near the end of the Behind the Bulldogs, like the regular series that we were doing. And that's the one thing too, is that like we're going to see that continuing on, because we were talking about a lot of freshmen that were doing very well. We got a promising future ahead of us, and I think these next few years are going to be even better when you see the improvement and especially the maturity come through with a lot of these younger guys.
I think that's something that's so important and really interesting when you look at this roster. And again, it feels like we talk about the mix that a lot of these Bulldog teams have of different classes, but especially for your team, Brandon, you guys had such an established group of veterans, and the presence that you had on that roster for the huge freshman class that came in this season, that not only was a big class, but also was a very successful class, showing Bulldog fans that they have a lot to be excited for over the coming years. But that established group of leadership that you had were really able to help those young players sort of develop. And then, of course, with the leadership of Coach Kelch, and then also Justin Jackson coming in with the sprints and what he's able to do, the energy that he's able to bring. And I think that was so important. And you see that in all of the young players that did so well this season, highlighted, of course, by Chase Carter. But the rest of them, that freshman class is so strong and going to be really good for years to come.
It really is. And when you look at the outdoor performances, and we'll touch on indoor later on in the show as well, you look at all of the top times. You can go on tfers.com. That's the place that everybody can go to find times, because you look online and a lot of times it's left out of the mix. You see like results, but is there like a dashboard where everything you can see? It's on tfers.org, so you can find that. And maybe we'll tag it in the episode as well when we upload it. I'll make sure to tag it when we put it online. So, but when you look at it, freshmen and sophomores, except for two spots. Kyle Drouillard in the javelin throw, which was not going to be his event this year, but he was resilient through an injury and actually literally threw for javelin and got some throws in as well with hammer and as well as shot put. But that he made that adjustment just to try to help us at GLIACs, which was a huge help as well. And then the other one was myself in steeplechase battling through this outdoor season as well. But you look at all the rest of them, freshman, sophomore, freshman. that's a really good sight to see for a program that wants to develop. And I think that it's just certainly going to get there. We're seeing a lot of the talent. There's some good recruits coming in, not only for sprints and jumps, but as well for distance. And especially for distance, that's going to be key because there's a big group of us that have moved on from the program. And I think that's going to be a really big thing for this group moving forward, and especially going into cross-country season, which we'll touch on later on towards the fall, later in the summer, for that episode more in depth as we preview the season. But I think it's definitely something that this group can really take as a positive moving forward, and really looking for that mentality of, all right, we put the baseline, now let's move that bar up each and every year, because that's where every program starts that way. Every single championship winning program starts that way. It's moving the ladder. You have to do it consistently year after year, and this is going to be a prime year to do it for this group.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to kind of find that identity of being that championship quality team, and for them to have that type of situation where you have a lot of new people coming in, and especially the baseline that you were talking about and kind of climbing up that ladder, being that there are so many young guys on this team. This is just a very promising situation to be in, because you might be a little bit nervous that, hey, we don't got a lot of veterans on the team, but these guys have already been showing out, and for them to be able to teach even the ones that are just one class below them and then keep that going for the next 3-4 years, I mean, sky's the limit.
Brandon, I remember talking to you over the years when we were students, and how you always talked about, going for runs and training with your teammates was one of the highlights of your career. And I think that that's something that's really important for these young athletes to understand. And they were able to watch you guys do that this past year in action. Again, it goes back to that leadership. But if this is such a strong group of core young players, freshmen and sophomore, for this team, that going forward, that sort of training, that sort of routine, that sort of chemistry to build with each other, even in a sport that's very individualized like track and field, has that team element. And I think that that's something that's so important. And you've pretty much nailed that, or hammered that nail in over the past 4 years or so to try to get that message across. And I think that's something that's really going to help this team.
Yeah, for sure. Highlighting some of the outdoor performances, as Brody mentioned earlier, Chase Carter was definitely a standout this year. We borrowed him over from TA's football squad, so we'll be sure to give him back in the fall. But as long as we get him back for winter and spring, so we have that contract put in place. I don't know if it's a Deion Sanders situation where we got to describe what full-time means, but we can talk about that later. But the kid is fantastic. I mean, this guy's a competitor. He's a dog, literally on the track, especially for his performances this year. Runner-up in the 100, 10.44, as well as runner-up in the 200, 21.37. I talked to him after those races, and I said, how are you feeling? He's like, I don't want to get second again. And I was like, all right, that's the attitude we want to see from you. So, but as well, myself, fourth in the steeplechase. Very happy with my performance, even though I had to battle through a lot of injuries overall through the spring, but definitely really glad with my performance there. 4x1 team finishing fifth. That team definitely was a top 3 team, just a bad day. So don't necessarily look at it as, oh, they only got fifth. That was a top 2, maybe top 3 team that would have gave the winners a run if they had some good handoffs, and it was just a bad day for them. So don't get it twisted there. But some really good overall performances there at GLIAC as well as on the season. I mean, Cooper Sorston, that kid is going to be a star. He might be my pick later on in our breakout. I'm not going to say it just yet. I'm going to stew on it a little bit. He was fantastic in the 5,000 and the 10,000. Blaine Rogers really opened up the sprints and hurdles for us. That's a position we've not had a lot of depth, and he's really taken that on. But I think especially you look at a lot of these young guys, and there's a lot of depth in the sprints. There's a lot of depth as well coming into the jumps when guys start getting healthy. And I think that's really going to provide a big spark in the throws as well. A lot of really good freshmen coming in. Hunter Richardson, Devin Dennison have really been standouts in the throws. They're going to continually improve with Coach Levine. So that's going to be really, really fun to watch. So I think this is a really good group that showed a lot of great things at outdoor, especially the distance crew over at Bucknell, and especially the sprints, a lot of the local meets at the end of the year. I think that's a really good thing to see from this group. And I think when you look at the times, the depth of seeing sophomores and freshmen, I mean, that's just, we keep saying it, and you can't hammer the nail all the way through the wood, but boy, if I can, I'm going to keep on doing it, because that's just a lot of improvement for this group coming up, and that's going to bring a lot of potential really for this team.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because when you look at the website, I mean, it's pretty much, like you said, freshman, sophomore, you get the juniors and the seniors sprinkled in there, but the best part about it too is when you go through even back to, fall and stuff like that, and then especially indoor, and then now to the finals, nationals, where you look at the outdoor championships, you just see consistent improvement by just not a whole lot, but you see the improvement being there. And that's the thing is, like, especially with running, you can have those situations. You also got to look at what the conditions are and stuff like that. But being able to have that type of improvement and being able to see that on paper does a whole lot more too for your mental being, to be able to just say, okay, I've been seeing the improvement. That means I know it's been working. It might be a little bit at a time, but to be able to push that through is even a bigger thing, especially with them being so young. I mean, they've got so many more years of improvement to go through. And
it's not just like there's one or two really superstar young freshmen. There's superstar freshmen at every single event, it seems like. At the sprints, you have Chase Carter. At distance, Brandon, you were just talking about Cooper Sorson. Then you mentioned Devin Dennison for some of the throws, and Hunter Richardson. These guys that are young, that are going to be in those positions for the next 3-4 years to come, they have a chance to continually grow year after year. And they were already, as freshmen this year, at the tops of their respective events. So there's just so much potential and so much hope for what could be in this Bulldog program over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And you saw especially a lot of these freshmen and sophomores not only necessarily qualifying for finals. That's a tough task in of itself for a lot of these events that have prelims, but also scoring pivotal points for this group, especially when you look at outdoors finishing 6th, really in a tough battle with Michigan Tech, who's a really good program, but as well as indoor also placing 6th. You saw a lot of those scoring efforts, and I think that's it's when you look at indoor, there's less teams, right? So you theoretically think there's more opportunities to score, so you should score higher, and that means place well. You score higher, but that does not mean you're going to place well, because every other team, all other 6 teams, have the same opportunity to put a lot of people on the line and be able to score points. So you have to think of that too. But indoor as well, Chase Carter, especially the 6.87 and the 60, one of the fastest times we've seen in over 5 years at least, to at least my recollection. Thinking about a lot of the archives, we've had a couple that have reached just at about 9.9, or it's not 9.9, 6.9, right around that range. But as well, you look at a lot of the performances as well. Dean Topolowski, one of the guys in the 400 as well. That's another name to mention moving down the road. And you saw a breakout season from Cooper Sorson. Can't tell you how much that kid worked and has really taken up this year as well. Ben Knuth is also one that I'm going to be watching out for. So I got a lot of different guys that I could pick, and I'm going to get some texts after this pod comes out, which based on which one I pick, but it's going to be fun to watch. But I think especially you look at the group, the DMR, the 4x4, there's a lot of potential in the relays due to that depth. And that's what you see with a lot of these really great teams, because you can see the superstars that put it on the line for these set events, but it's the relays of how many guys do you have that can run, these sub 50 400s. You might have 1 or 2 on a what you would call an average program, but moving it forward into that near elite status, you're going to have to get 4, 5, 6 people under that threshold. You got to get these guys under 425, 420 in the miles so they can compete and score, and that's just the steps that need to be taken. So, but I think you look at a lot of great performances as well. Ben Dusa is one that I'll be watching as well, a freshman that was thrown this past year. I think he'll be one to watch. Gavin Van Solkema as well threw down a very good outdoor 1500 time. He was great in the mile indoors as well. You'll just see Cooper Sorson because he beat him by maybe I think it was 1.3 seconds for a standout year that he had. But still, really good performances across the board from the group. And you saw some scores. But I think when it looks at the indoor schedule, Saginaw, Grand Valley are the only places that you'll probably be at, just due to the fact that they're really the only indoor tracks in the area. But I think when you look at a lot of these meets, like Big Meet, when you're looking at, the Snowdown Showdown, if we go back to that one that we did a couple years ago, it's going to be a really key factor to see some of those big performances in those big events. Because this year we kind of saw a little bit of a slip up. We got it back by the time championships came around, which was great. But seeing those big performances really translate in the big meets, that's going to bring more confidence for this group. And now that we have that a year of experience, should be a lot easier.
I just love having you around, Brandon, because you just know so much.
So smart.
That's why, I don't really know what to say after that, because it's just you lay it all out perfectly. But yeah, being able to perform, even with indoors and stuff like that, the one tough part about it is it's a big difference. Obviously, track is just a little bit shorter. You don't really have to deal with the conditions of being outside, but even performing in those big meets in indoor can give you a lot of momentum when you have to, get ready to go to outdoors. And yeah, it's a big change kind of with everything that goes on, switching those type of environments, but still being able to make sure that when it's a big moment, lights won't be too bright for you and be able to perform. It's going to make sure that end of season outdoor at the GLIAC Championships is going to be that much better.
I think it's important to know too that Brandon when he talks about this program, there's a certain level of confidence that he exudes, and that's not exclusive to Brandon. When I was down at the GLIAC Championships, talking to Coach Kels, talking to Justin Jackson, talking to Gavin Van Salkema after he qualified, every one of those guys was just very calm, very collected, and very confident in the state of the program, not just for this year, but there was like this overwhelming sense of, okay, we're going to be good in the coming years. We just have to put our noses down and grind, get to work and be dogs out there. And I really do think that that's a trait that this team is going to have. And just that overall sense of confidence in the program, I think was very, very apparent to me and very impressive. And I'm excited to see where this team goes.
Yeah, for sure. And it comes down to the chemistry and the culture, which we talked about on the women's on the last episode. Mm-hmm. You can find that out in the feed below as well. There really has to be that sense of connection with each group, individually. And that's something that they're trying to improve. The coaching staff and the actual team itself are trying to get together and get on the same page with. And that's something that has to start from the ground up, especially when you're looking to take these big steps as a program moving forward. So, but I have a lot of great optimism. I really do. I know a lot of these guys, especially on the men's side. I know what they can do. I know how hard they work. And that's really what brings that optimism up to light, when we're talking about these teams. But I think overall as a program, there's a lot to really have with potential wise of this group. And we just hope they can get there. We can see the potential there. We can see it up at the top level where you can competing with some of these top dogs in the GLIAC, which people don't realize the GLIAC is the best conference. I can be biased, but I've lived it. Okay. It is the toughest conference in Division II when it comes to track in of itself. Now, distance, you could say maybe the RMAC, maybe the GLVC can make that argument. The Midwest region is by far the best, I would say, when it comes to running in general due to the depth. Obviously, the RMAC really runs the Western regions, but that's really the only conference that really runs it. But you look at the depth overall, the Midwest region, when it comes to track and cross country, is one of the toughest, right? It is the dog among dogs. We placed this team ironically way back into the fall, looking at where we would be in another region. We're a top 4 team in some of these other regions when it comes to looking at the top 10 teams, the depth as far as cross country times go. When it comes to the distance crew, we would have been a top 4 team in the East region this past year. And in the Midwest, we were just outside the top 15. That just goes to show you how tough this region is. It really is. So when you look at these team scores and you look at a lot of these, don't necessarily look at it from the lens of, man, they're hitting maybe just above average of the entire region. Like, are they that good? It's like, wait, hold on. Look at the other regions too and say, okay, this is a really good group that is in an absolute juggernaut of a schedule and of a playing field when it comes to what teams step on the line. Look at where football is, right? Making that comparison. Got to make it out of Super Region 3, but if you do, you get to the Natty, like guarantee, maybe they'll redraw the lines. We'll debate that in another episode. But that is the biggest key for this group, is being able to battle those top teams, and they're going to be able to do it each and every meet just due to being in a localized setting when it comes to these meets and having a schedule that has been set for over the years.
Yeah, man. Again, you make everything so hard to follow.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to tee it up.
We gotta switch over to Brody this time because you make it so hard to tee up. It's just you go so in depth with everything, and it's so tough. But yeah, it's tough too because it makes it. The one tough thing about it being such a stacked area is that you get surrounded by such great talent, and when you are on that individual scale, it might be tough when you go to those meets and you have to see man, I am falling behind when it comes to these other schools and stuff like that. But if you look at it on a bigger picture and being an athlete and looking at it at a wider scale, it's if I was to go to some of these meets out west or down south or something, I could actually be a very good runner. It's you still are, but just being surrounded by greatness all the time doesn't dilute how good you actually are.
What a place to be as a competitor, though. As a college athlete, you look around, this is where you want to compete. You look around and say, okay, yeah, we might be 4th in one of these other regions, but we're just outside the top 15. As a competitor, man, that fires you up, right? You're ready to go out there and prove that you belong and you can compete with some of these top teams. And being just outside the top 15, that means you have that much more room to grow and room to improve and room to show people, hey, we're here to compete. I think that's amazing. And Brandon, maybe you can speak a little bit more to the competition side of that mentality and what goes into, as a collegiate athlete, because I'm just talking about my experience from years and years ago playing high school athletics. But as a college athlete, that the competitor in you, man, you just got to be so fired up to have that opportunity. And you look across this roster and you think, this is a team that can do it.
This really is a team that can do it. I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak on the behalf of my teammates, but especially when it comes to the mentality of being able to compete in this region, it really is a privilege. And I mean, I've especially looked at over the last 2 years, looking at steeplechase. I mean, you're looking at a Provo type of time, which I know I very well could have hit. Other circumstances had other ideas, but at the end of the day, it is what it is and life goes on. But when you look at being a top 20 competitor in the entire region, top 10 at one time, you're looking at the other 9 guys and you're saying, I see these guys literally every other week. It's like I can compete against a good group of them every single week, because obviously Grand Valley has a lot of depth when it comes to each and every event on the track. You look at teams like Walsh, you look at teams like Tiffin, you look at teams like Lewis that are always at some of these meets that we're at, cross indoor track, outdoor track, and they're not only the best in the region, they're some of the best in the nation. You look at the percentages, 50 to 75% of the top groups are from the Midwest region. And it's like, man, I'm competing against, the number one competitor at one point in the nation, Caleb Futter, every time I'm going into steeplechase. I mean, that is a privilege, obviously there's a gap that you can't necessarily pick up in the span of a year, but man, it's like, okay, I can see these guys. These are the best of the best, and I'm lacing my spikes up right next to them. That's a privilege, and a lot of people don't see that necessarily when they're looking at a lot of these schools. They're looking to go D2. When you're looking at a lot of these programs, you're maybe looking at D1 and saying like, I want to be with the best of the best. Like, you can go D2 and you're going to have the opportunity at a school like Ferris, at a school like in these GLIAC schools that are like, they are going to be playing against the best of the best in not necessarily just the region, the nation. And I think that's the biggest ploy for, not making a recruiting plug, but it definitely can be used for a recruiting plug. Come on over, come to Big Rapids. You can be in a position to compete against these schools in the region and in the nation. And that's something that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, you really can't. I mean, it's kind of like it's not like a unicorn spot, but it's just like, it's rare to see all these good, especially like Grand Valley being an hour away from Big Rapids. Like, it's very rare to see this good of competition in such a small area. I mean, you even look in just Michigan, you have Saginaw Valley too, who's a very competitive team. In one state, to have 3 teams who can compete and be that good, it's just insane to think about.
I mean, again, you hit the nail on the head, Brandon, with everything you were just talking about. But the truth really is that when you can see what you're striving for, it's easier to see what your potential can be. And I think that, like you said, when you're lacing your cleats up next to these guys that you're directly competing against, and as a competitor, you can see their times, you can see their performance, you can literally with your own eyeballs watch what they do and shoot to, and you can know what you're trying to shoot for to be as a competitor. I think that just gives you all the more spark and all the more fire. And when you know that you have that capability to compete with them on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis or whatever it is in a season, that just fires you up even more. I can't wait to see how that motivates this team going forward.
I can't wait to watch this group this year. I think it's going to be special. But now it is that time. We wrap up the show. We got to give our picks for a breakout candidate. Now, normally I go first, but I'm in like this, morally tugging battle where I can't go.
You can go first, Brandon.
No, I don't.
You can have all the names to pick from.
I
thought you meant the morally tugging battle of like making me feel like I don't know anything.
Oh, no. I would never say that.
He doesn't know who to choose, so he wants to have two fewer options to pick from.
Exactly right.
There we go.
So somebody else can go first, and then I will go last.
You can go first, Brody.
Okay, my pick's going to be Gavin Van Salkema.
Gosh,
I talked to him. I talked to him at the GLIAC Outdoor Championships after he qualified in the 1500. He posted a very good time this year. Young runner rather, from Hudsonville. He's got a ton of potential. I think you can just tell again by his mindset and the confidence that he exuded in his abilities that he has a very, very bright future for this team. Already had good results this past season. I think he's just going to continue to improve over the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, great pick.
I'm going to go Cooper Sorson, because I've seen, especially him being able to do very well in the 10,000 meter. He had some pretty solid improvement throughout the whole time, especially he's in the 5,000 meter too at some points. But he was able to be very good. I mean, he shaved off a few seconds all throughout the season of outdoor, especially going from, even to indoor too. A lot of the events that he was in, he was putting up some solid numbers, but especially when you go to Bison Outdoor Classic, he was tossing up a 14:51 in the 5,000 meter and doing some pretty solid stuff, especially at the outdoors too, when he was in 10,000 meter at 31:32. So I think it's going to be really solid improvement from him, especially only being a freshman. I think he's going to be doing some real solid work.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see. All right, I got it down to 3. Okay, I'm going to pick one from each. So you look behind Chase Carter. Bryson Fronta is going to have a really good year next year. I really do. He had a great year this year, but it was obviously overshadowed by a guy that was on the podium 3 times this year with Chase Carter. So I think he's going to be fantastic in the sprints. Devin Dennison, of course, is going to be a name to watch in the throws. He has really developed in his first year. It's going to be great to see what he does. And then one name, sneaky name, and he's a local guy, and I really love the direction he's going. It's Ben Knuth. You won't see him on these top 4, top 5 lists necessarily when you're looking online, but he has improved immensely from day one until May of this year. It has been a huge improvement watching him in the 5K and really develop all around. He's going to be a really big standout guy, I think, next year. So shameless plug there. But those are the guys that I think will have really good seasons this year. There's so many more. I could keep naming, every single person why they're going to have a good season too. You could throw out the Andrew Shaffleys. You can throw out a lot of these other names of standouts that are also going to be back this year. So it's going to be really fun to see. But that's really going to be a really fun team to watch this year. I really do. And I think that as long as everything is going straight for this group, no injuries, everybody's still on the track and on the course, we're going to be in good shape. But
fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely.
No injuries. That's the big one.
For sure. And that goes with any sport, really.
Absolutely.
General, so.
If everyone could just play healthy all the time, that'd be
very
fantastic.
Cool. Amazing. So that's going to do it for us here on episode number 5 of the Summer Collaboration Series as we recap all the Ferris State sports. We'll be back next week. Topic TBD. We got some discussions here to be going through on what will be next, but we will soon be transitioning to recapping the winter sports, and then we will get to the fall sports once we get closer to the fall, so we can start previewing them moving forward. So there is a method to the madness. But thanks to Dazos Digital, and thanks to you guys as well for jumping on as always. And I guess we'll see you in about 7 days.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Until next time.
Take care, everybody.